other things are false.
See that?
You talk about women and women's rights. So these are people that push gays off buildings. These are people that kill women and treat women horribly, and yet you take their money. So I don't the money for all these countries. You talk about women and women's rights. So these are people that push gays off buildings. These are people that kill women and treat women horribly, and yet you take their money. So I don't the money for all these countries. You talk about women and women's rights. So these are people that push gays off buildings. These are people that kill women and treat women horribly, and yet you take their money. So I
debate, he has not paid a penny in federal income tax. And we were talking about immigrants a few minutes ago, Chris. You know, half of all immigrants, undocumented immigrants in our country, actually pay federal income tax. So we have undocumented immigrants in America who are paying more federal income tax than a billionaire. I find that
let me just tell you very
astonishing.
Simply, we're entitled, because of the laws that people like her pass, to take massive amounts of depreciation and other charges, and we do it. And all of her donors, just about all of them, I know Buffett took hundreds of millions of dollars, George Soros, took hundreds of millions of dollars. Let me just explain. All of her donors, most of her donors have done the same thing as I did.
Okay.
And you know what you should have done?
Folks, we heard
and
this.
You know, Hillary, what you should have done? You should have changed the law when you were a United States Senator. If
Folks,
you don't like
we heard
it.
this.
Yeah.
Because your donors and your special interests are doing the same thing as I do, except even more so.
Well,
you should have changed the law, but you won't change the law because you take in so much money. I mean, I sat in my apartment today on a very beautiful hotel down the street, known as
Made with Chinese steel.
But I will tell you, I sat there watching ad after ad after ad, false ad, all paid for by your friends on Wall Street that gave so much money because they know you're going to protect them. And frankly, you should have changed the laws.
Trump,
if you don't like what I did, you should have changed the laws.
Mr. Trump, I want to ask you about one last question in this topic. You have been warning at rallies recently that this election is rigged and that Hillary Clinton is in the process of trying to steal it from you. Your running mate, Governor Pence, pledged on Sunday that he and you, his words, will absolutely accept the result of this election. Today, your daughter Ivanka said the same thing. I want to ask you here on the stage tonight, do you make the same commitment that you will absolutely, sir, that you will absolutely accept the result of this election?
I will look at it at the time. I'm not looking at anything now. I'll look at it at the time. What I've seen is so bad. First of all, the media is so dishonest and so corrupt, and the pile-on is so amazing. The New York Times actually wrote an article about it that they don't even care. It's so dishonest, and they've poisoned the minds of the voters. But unfortunately for them, I think the voters are seeing through it. I think they're going to see through it. We'll find out on November 8th, but I think they're going to see through it.
But, sir, there's
If you look, excuse me, Chris, if you look at your voter rolls, you will see millions of people that are registered to vote. Millions. This isn't coming from me. This is coming from Pew Report and other places. Millions of people that are registered to vote that shouldn't be registered to vote. So let me just give you one other thing. So I talk about the corrupt media. I talk about the millions of people. Tell you one other thing. She shouldn't be allowed to run. She's guilty of a very, very serious crime. She should not be allowed to run. And just in that respect, I say it's rigged, because she should never, Chris, she should never have been allowed to run for the presidency based on what she did with emails and so many other things.
But, sir, there is a tradition in this country. In fact, one of the prides of this country is the peaceful transition of power, and that no matter how hard fought a campaign is, that at the end of the campaign, that the loser concedes to the winner. Not saying that you're necessarily going to be the loser or the winner, but that the loser concedes to the winner, and that the country comes together in part for the good of the country. Are you saying you're not prepared now to commit to that principle?
What I'm saying is that I will tell you at the time. I'll keep you in suspense.
Well,
okay?
Chris, let me respond to that, because that's horrifying. You know, every time Donald thinks things are not going in his direction, he claims whatever it is rigged against him. The FBI conducted a year-long investigation into my emails. They concluded there was no case. He said the FBI was rigged. He lost the Iowa caucus. He lost the Wisconsin primary. He said the Republican primary was rigged against him. Then Trump University gets sued for fraud and racketeering. He claims the court system and the federal judge is rigged against him. There was even a time when he didn't get an Emmy for his TV program 3 years in a row, and he started tweeting that the Emmys were rigged against him.
Should have gotten it.
This is a mindset. This is how Donald thinks. And it's funny, but it's also really troubling.
Okay.
You know, that is not the way our democracy works. We've been around for 240 years. We've had free and fair elections. We've accepted the outcomes when we may not have liked them. And that is what must be expected of anyone standing on a debate stage during a general election. You know, President Obama said the other day, when you're whining before the game is even finished, it just shows you're not up to doing the job. And let's be clear about what he is saying and what that means. He is denigrating, he's talking down our democracy. And I, for one, am appalled that somebody who is the nominee of one of our two major parties would take that kind of position.
I think what the FBI did and what the Department of Justice did, including meeting with her husband, the Attorney General, in the back of an airplane on the tarmac in Arizona, I think it's disgraceful. I think it's a disgrace.
All right.
I think we've never had a situation so bad.
Hold on, folks. This doesn't do any good for anyone. Let's please continue the debate, and let's move on to the subject of foreign hotspots. The Iraqi offensive to take back Mosul has begun. If they are successful in pushing ISIS out of that city and out of all of Iraq, the question then becomes, what happens the day after? And that's something that whoever of you ends up as president is going to have to confront. Will you put U.S. troops into that vacuum to make sure that ISIS doesn't come back or isn't replaced by something even worse? Secretary Clinton, you go first in this segment. You have 2 minutes.
Well, I am encouraged that there is an effort led by the Iraqi army, supported by Kurdish forces, and also given the help and advice from the number of special forces and other Americans on the ground, but I will not support putting American soldiers into Iraq as an occupying force. I don't think that is in our interests, and I don't think that would be smart to do. In fact, Chris, I think that would be a big red flag waving for ISIS to reconstitute itself. The goal here is to take back Mosul. It's going to be a hard fight. I've got no illusions about that. And then continue to press into Syria to begin to take back and move on Raqqa, which is the ISIS headquarters. I am hopeful that the hard work that American military advisors have done will pay off, and that we will see a really successful military operation. But we know we've got lots of work to do. Syria will remain a hotbed of terrorism as long as the civil war, aided and abetted by the Iranians and the Russians, continue. So I have said, look, we need to keep our eye on ISIS. That's why I want to have an intelligence surge that protects us here at home, why we have to go after them from the air, on the ground, online, why we have to make sure here at home we don't let terrorists buy weapons. If you're too dangerous to fly, you're too dangerous to buy a gun. And I'm going to continue to push for a no-fly zone and safe havens within Syria, not only to help protect the Syrians and prevent the constant outflow of refugees, but to frankly gain some leverage on both the Syrian government and the Russians so that perhaps we can have the kind of serious negotiation necessary to bring the conflict to an end and go forward on a political track.
Mr. Trump, same question. If we are able to push ISIS out of Mosul and out of Iraq, would you be willing to put U.S. troops in there to prevent their return or something else?
Let me tell you, Mosul's so sad. We had Mosul. But when she left, when she took everybody out, we lost Mosul. Now we're fighting again to get Mosul. The problem with Mosul and what they wanted to do is they wanted to get the leaders of ISIS who they felt were in Mosul. About 3 months ago, I started reading that they want to get the leaders and they're going to attack Mosul. Whatever happened to the element of surprise? Okay? We announced we're going after Mosul. I've been reading about going after Mosul now for about, how long is it, Hillary? 3 months? These people have all left. They've all left. The element of surprise. Douglas MacArthur, George Patton, spinning in their graves when they see the stupidity of our country. So we're now fighting for Mosul that we had. All she had to do is stay there. Now we're going in to get it. But you know who the big winner in Mosul is going to be after we eventually get it? And the only reason they did it is because she's running for the office of president. And they want to look tough. They want to look good. He violated the red line in the sand, and he made so many mistakes, made all mistakes. That's why we have the Great Migration. But she wanted to look good for the election, so they're going in. But who's going to get Mosul, really? We'll take Mosul eventually. By the way, if you look at what's happening, much tougher than they thought. Much, much tougher, much more dangerous, going to be more deaths than they thought. But the leaders that we wanted to get are all gone because they're smart. They said, what do we need this for? So Mosul is going to be a wonderful thing, and Iran should write us a letter of thank you, just like the really stupid, the stupidest deal of all time. A deal that's going to give Iran absolutely nuclear weapons. Iran should write us yet another letter saying thank you very much. Because Iran, as I said many years ago, Iran is taking over Iraq, something they've wanted to do forever, but we've made it so easy for them. So we're now going to take Mosul, and you know who's going to be the beneficiary? Iran. Boy, are they making, I mean, they are outsmarting. Look, you're not there. You might be involved in that decision, but you were there when you took everybody out of Mosul and out of Iraq. You shouldn't have been in Iraq, but you did vote for it. You shouldn't have been in Iraq, but once you were in Iraq, you should have never left the way. The point is, the big winner is going to be Iran.
Well, you know, once again, Donald is implying that he didn't support the invasion of Iraq. I said it was a mistake. I've said that years ago. He has consistently denied what is a very clear fact, that before the invasion, he supported it. And, you know, I just want everybody to go Google it. Google Donald Trump Iraq, and you will see the dozens of sources which verify that he was for the invasion of Iraq. And you can actually hear the audio of him saying that. Now, why does that matter? Well, it matters because he has not told the truth about that position. I guess he believes it makes him look better now to contrast with me because I did vote for it. But what's really important here is to understand all the interplay. Mosul is a Sunni city. Mosul is on the border of Syria. And yes, we do need to go after Baghdadi, and just like we went after bin Laden while you were doing Celebrity Apprentice, and we brought him to justice. We need to go after the leadership, but we need to get rid of them, get rid of their fighters. They're estimated several thousand fighters in Mosul. They've been digging underground. They've been prepared to defend. It's going to be tough fighting, but I think we can take back Mosul, and then we can move on into Syria and take back Raqqa. This is what we have to do. I'm just amazed that he seems to think that the Iraqi government and our allies and everybody else launched the attack on Mosul to help me in this election. But that's how Donald thinks, you know. He always is looking for some
Chris, we don't gain anything.
He has all the
Iran is taking over Iraq.
Secretary Clinton,
Iran is taking over Iraq. We don't gain
Secretary
anything.
Clinton,
We would have gained if they did it by surprise.
Wait. Secretary Clinton, it's an open discussion.
He
Secretary,
We would have gained if they did it by
Secretary,
surprise.
please let
They
Mr.
did
Trump
that.
speak.
He's unfit,
Go ahead.
and he proves it every
No,
time
you
he
are the
talks.
one that's unfit. You know, WikiLeaks just actually came out. John Podesta said some horrible things about you, and boy, was he right. He said some beauties. And you know, Bernie Sanders, he said you have bad judgment. You do. And if you think that going into Mosul, after we let the world know we're going in, and all of the people that we really wanted, the leaders, they're all gone. If you think that was good, then you do. Now, John Podesta said you have terrible instincts. Bernie Sanders said you have bad judgment. I agree with both.
Well, you should ask Bernie Sanders who he's supporting for president, and he has said,
Which is
as
a
he
big
has
mistake.
campaigned for me around the country, you are the most dangerous person to run for president in the modern history of America. I think he's right.
Let's turn to Aleppo. Mr. Trump, in the last debate, you were both asked about the situation in the Syrian city of Aleppo, and I want to follow up on that because you said several things in that debate which were not true, sir. You said that Aleppo has basically fallen. In fact, there are
It's a catastrophe.
It is a catastrophe, but
mess.
there are a quarter
Have you
of...
seen it? Have you seen it?
Sir,
Have you seen what's happened
sir,
to Aleppo?
if I might finish my question.
Okay, so it hasn't fallen. Take a look at it.
Well, there are 250,000 people still living there and being slaughtered.
That's right.
You also
and
said,
they are being slaughtered
Yes.
because of bad decisions.
if I may just finish here, and you also said that that Syria and Russia are busy fighting ISIS. In fact, they have been the ones who've been bombing and shelling eastern Aleppo, and they just announced a humanitarian pause, in effect admitting that they have been bombing and shelling Aleppo. Would you like to clear that up, sir?
Well, Aleppo is a disaster. It's a humanitarian nightmare, but it has fallen from any standpoint. I mean, what do you need, a signed document? Take a look at Aleppo. It is so sad when you see what's happened. And a lot of this is because of Hillary Clinton, because what's happened is by fighting Assad, who turned out to be a lot tougher than she thought, and now she's going to say, oh, he loves Assad. He's just much tougher and much smarter than her and Obama. And everyone thought he was gone 2 years ago, 3 years ago. He aligned with Russia. He now also aligned with Iran, who we made very powerful. We gave them $150 billion back. We give them $1.7 billion in cash. I mean cash, bundles of cash as big as this stage. We gave them $1.7 billion. Now, they have aligned, he has aligned with Russia and with Iran. They don't want ISIS, but they have other things because we're backing rebels. We don't know who the rebels are. We're giving them lots of money, lots of everything. We don't know who the rebels are. And when and if, and it's not going to happen because you have Russia and you have Iran now, but if they ever did overthrow Assad, you might end up with as bad as Assad is, and he's a bad guy. But you may very well end up with worse than Assad. If she did nothing, we'd be in much better shape. And this is what's caused the Great Migration, where she's taken in tens of thousands of Syrian refugees who probably in many cases, not probably, who are definitely, in many cases, ISIS aligned, and we now have them in our country, and wait till you see, this is going to be the great Trojan horse, and wait till you see what happens in the coming years. Lots of luck, Hillary. Thanks a lot for doing a great job.
Secretary Clinton, you have talked about, and in the last debate and again today, that you would impose a no-fly zone to try to protect the people of Aleppo and to stop the killing there. President Obama has refused to do that because he fears it's going to draw us closer or deeper into the conflict. And General Joseph Dunford, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, says, you impose a no-fly zone, chances are you're going to get into a war, his words, with Syria and Russia. So the question I have is, if you impose a no-fly zone, first of all, how do you respond to their concerns? Secondly, if you impose a no-fly zone and a Russian plane violates that, does President Clinton shoot that plane down?
Well, Chris, first of all, I think a no-fly zone could save lives and could hasten the end of the conflict. I am well aware of the really legitimate concerns that you have expressed from both the president and the general. This would not be done just on the first day. This would take a lot of negotiation. It would also take making it clear to the Russians and the Syrians that our purpose here was to provide safe zones on the ground. We've had millions of people leave Syria, and those millions of people inside Syria who've been dislocated. So I think we could strike a deal and make it very clear to the Russians and the Syrians that this was something that we believed was in the best interests of the people on the ground in Syria. It would help us with our fight against ISIS. But I want to respond to what Donald said about refugees. He's made these claims repeatedly. I am not going to let anyone into this country who is not vetted, who we do not have confidence in, but I am not going to slam the door on women and children. That picture of that little 4-year-old boy in Aleppo with the blood coming down his face while he sat in an ambulance is haunting. And so we are going to do very careful, thorough vetting. That does not solve our internal challenges with ISIS and our need to stop radicalization, to work with American Muslim communities who are on the front lines to identify and prevent attacks. In fact, the killer of the dozens of people at the nightclub in Orlando, the Pulse nightclub, was born in Queens, the same place Donald was born. So let's be clear about what the threat is and how we are best going to be able to meet it. And yes, some of that threat emanates from over in Syria and Iraq, and we've got to keep fighting, and I will defeat ISIS. And some of it is we have to up our game and be much smarter here
Folks,
at home.
I want to get into our final segment.
But I just have to, it's
Real
so
quick.
ridiculous what she will defeat ISIS. We should have never let ISIS happen in the first place. And right now they're in 32 countries.
Okay.
You should have never. Wait 1 second. They had a ceasefire 3 weeks ago. A ceasefire, United States, Russia, Syria. And during the ceasefire, Russia took over vast swatches of land. And then they said, we don't want the ceasefire anymore. We are so outplayed on missiles, on ceasefires. They are outplayed. Now, she wasn't there. I assume she had nothing to do with it. But our country is so outplayed by Putin and Assad and, by the way, and by Iran. Nobody can believe how stupid our leadership is.
Mr. Trump, Secretary Clinton, no, we need to move on to our final segment, and that is the national debt, which has not been discussed until tonight. Our national debt as a share of the economy, our GDP, is now 77%. That's the highest since just after World War II. But the nonpartisan Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget says, Secretary Clinton, under your plan, debt would rise to 86% of GDP over the next 10 years. Mr. Trump, under your plan, they say it would rise to 105% of GDP over the next 10 years. Question is, why are both of you ignoring this problem? Mr. Trump, you go first.
Well, I say they're wrong because I'm going to create tremendous jobs. And we're bringing GDP from really 1%, which is what it is now, and if she got in, it'll be less than 0. But we're bringing it from 1% up to 4%, and I actually think we can go higher than 4%. I think you can go to 5 or 6%. And if we do, you don't have to bother asking your question, because we have a tremendous machine. We will have created a tremendous economic machine once again. To do that, we're taking back jobs. We're not going to let our companies be raided by other countries where we lose all our jobs. We don't make our product. anymore. It's very sad. But I'm going to create the kind of a country that we were from the standpoint of industry. We used to be there. We've given it up. We've become very, very sloppy. We've had people that are political hacks making the biggest deals in the world, bigger than companies. You take these big companies, these trade deals are far bigger than these companies. And yet we don't use our great leaders, many of whom back me and many of whom back Hillary, I must say. But we don't use those people. Those are the people, these are the greatest negotiators in the world. We have the greatest business people in the world. We have to use them to negotiate our trade deals. We use political hacks. We use people that get the position because they made a campaign contribution. And they're dealing with China and people that are very much smarter than they are. So we have to use our great people. But with that being said, we will create an economic machine, the likes of which we haven't seen in many decades. And people, Chris, will again go back to work, and they'll make a lot of money, and we'll have companies that will grow and expand and start from new.
Secretary Clinton.
Well, first, when I hear Donald talk like that and know that his slogan is "Make America Great Again," I wonder when he thought America was great. And before he rushes and says, you know, before you and President Obama were there, I think it's important to recognize that he has been criticizing our government for decades. You know, back in 1987, he took out a $100,000 ad in the New York Times during the time when President Reagan was president and basically said exactly what he just said now, that we were the laughing stock of the world. He was criticizing President Reagan. This is the way Donald thinks about himself, puts himself into, you know, the middle and says, you know, I alone can fix it, as he said on the convention stage. But if you look at the debt, which is the issue you asked about, Chris, I pay for everything I'm proposing. I do not add a penny to the national debt. I take that very seriously because I do think it's one of the issues we've got to come to grips with. So when I talk about how we're going to pay for education, how we're going to invest in infrastructure, how we're going to get the cost of prescription drugs down, and a lot of the other issues that people talk to me about all the time, I've made it very clear we are going where the money is. We are going to ask the wealthy and corporations to pay their fair share. And there is no evidence whatsoever that will slow down or diminish our growth. In fact, I think just the opposite. We'll have what economists call middle-out growth. We've got to get back to rebuilding the middle class, the families of America. That's where growth will come from. That's why I want to invest in you. I want to invest in your family. And I think that's the smartest way to grow the economy, to make the economy fairer. And we just have a big disagreement about this. It may be because of our experiences. You know, he started off with his dad as a millionaire. I started off with my dad as a small businessman.
We've heard this before.
I think it's, you know, it's a difference that affects how we see the world and what we want to do with the economy.
Time.
Thank you, Hillary. Could I just respond?
Well, no.
Because
sir,
I did
we're running out of
disagree with
time.
Ronald Reagan very strongly on trade. I disagreed with him. We should have been much tougher on trade even then. I've been waiting for years. Nobody does it right. And frankly, now we're going to do it right.
All right. The one last area I want to get into with you in this debate is the fact that the biggest driver of our debt is entitlements, which is 60% of all federal spending. Now, the Committee for Responsible Federal Budget has looked at both of your plans, and they say neither of you has a serious plan that is going to solve the fact that Medicare is going to run out of money in the 2020s, Social Security is going to run out of money in the 2030s, and at that time, recipients are going to take huge cuts in their benefits. So, in effect, the final question I want to ask you in this regard is, and let me start with you, Mr. Trump, would President Trump make a deal to save Medicare and Social Security that included both tax increases and benefit cuts, in effect, a grand bargain on entitlements?
I'm cutting taxes. We're going to grow the economy. It's going to grow at a record rate.
But that's not going to help on entitlements.
It's going to totally help you. And one thing we have to do, repeal and replace the disaster known as Obamacare. It's destroying our country. It's destroying our businesses, our small business, and our big businesses. We have to repeal and replace Obamacare. You take a look at the kind of numbers that will cost us in the year 17. It is a disaster if we don't repeal and replace. Now, it's probably going to die of its own weight, but Obamacare has to go. The premiums are going up 60, 70, 80%. Next year, they're going to go up over 100%. And I'm really glad that the premiums have started. At least the people see what's happening, because she wants to keep Obamacare and she wants to make it even worse. And it can't get any worse. Bad health care at the most expensive price. We have to repeal and replace Obamacare.
And Secretary Clinton, same question, because at this point, Social Security and Medicare are going to run out, the trust funds are going to run out of money. Will you, as president, will you consider a grand bargain, a deal that includes both tax increases and benefit cuts to try to save both programs?
Well, Chris, I am on record as saying that we need to put more money into the Social Security Trust Fund. That's part of my commitment to raise taxes on the wealthy. My Social Security payroll contribution will go up, as will Donald's, assuming he can't figure out how to get out of it. But what we want to do is to replenish the Social Security Trust Fund by making sure that we have sufficient resources, and that will come from either raising the cap and or finding other ways to get more money into it. I will not cut benefits. I want to enhance benefits for low-income workers and for women who have been disadvantaged by the current Social Security system. But what Donald is proposing with these massive tax cuts will result in a $20 trillion additional national debt. That will have dire consequences for Social Security and Medicare. And I'll say something about the Affordable Care Act, which he wants to repeal. The Affordable Care Act extended the solvency of the Medicare Trust Fund. So if he repeals it, our Medicare problem gets worse. What we need to do is go after the long-term health care drivers. We've got to get costs down, increase value, emphasize wellness. I have a plan for doing that, and I think that we will be able to get entitlement spending under control with more resources and smarter decisions.
This is the final time, probably to both of your delight, that you're going to be on the stage together in this campaign. I would like to end it on a positive note. You had not agreed to closing statements, but it seems to me in a funny way that might make it more interesting, because you haven't prepared closing statements. So I'd like you each to take, and we're going to put a clock up, a minute, as the final question in the final debate to tell the American people why they should elect you to be the next president. This is another new mini segment. Secretary Clinton, it's your turn to go first.
Well, I would like to say to everyone watching tonight that I'm reaching out to all Americans, Democrats, Republicans, and independents, because we need everybody to help make our country what it should be, to grow the economy, to make it fairer, to make it work for everyone. We need your talents, your skills, your commitment, your energy, your ambition. You know, I've been privileged to see the presidency up close, and I know the awesome responsibility of protecting our country and the incredible opportunity of working to try to make life better for all of you. I have made the cause of children and families really my life's work. That's what my mission will be in the presidency. I will stand up for families against powerful interests, against corporations. I will do everything that I can to make sure that you have good jobs with rising incomes, that your kids have good educations from preschool through college. I hope you will give me a chance to serve as your president.
Secretary Clinton, thank you. Mr. Trump?
She's raising the money from the people she wants to control. It doesn't work that way. But when I started this campaign, I started it very strongly. It's called Make America Great Again. We're going to make America great. We have a depleted military. It has to be helped, has to be fixed. We have the greatest people on earth in our military. We don't take care of our veterans. We take care of illegal immigrants, people that come into the country illegally, better than we take care of our vets. That can't happen. Our policemen and women are disrespected. We need law and order, but we need justice too. Our inner cities are a disaster. You get shot walking to the store. They have no education. They have no jobs. I will do more for African Americans and Latinos than she can ever do in 10 lifetimes. All she's done is talk to the African Americans and to the Latinos. But they get the vote, and then they come back, they say, we'll see you in 4 years. We are going to make America strong again, and we are going to make America great again, and it has to start now. We cannot take 4 more years of Barack Obama, and that's what you get when you get her.
Thank you both. Secretary Clinton, hold on just a moment, folks. Secretary Clinton, Mr. Trump, I want to thank you both for participating in all 3 of these debates. That brings to an end this year's debate sponsored by the Commission on Presidential Debates. We want to thank the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and its students for having us. Now the decision is up to you. While millions have already voted, Election Day, November 8th, is just 20 days away. One thing everyone here can agree on: we hope you will go vote. It is one of the honors and obligations of living in this great country. Thank you, and good night.
The last final debate of this election season, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton there on stage with Chris Wallace, host of Fox News Sunday. A fiery debate throughout, this time focusing a lot, much more like a traditional Republican-Democrat debate on policy issues. Donald Trump probably having the best 30 minutes that he's had on policy and making his argument as cogently as he can. Of all 3 debates, really hitting hard on a number of the issues we talked about going in. If you are a Hillary Clinton fan, you say she came to this debate well prepared, with lines ready to go. If you don't like Hillary Clinton, you say she sounded rehearsed. And the back and forth there with the Clinton Foundation, something that had not been asked about in the previous debates. She seemed not to answer the question about pay to play that was posed a couple of times by Chris Wallace. Overall, is it enough for Donald Trump to move the needle? Has he talked to enough people to move the ball in this election that's heading her way? She clearly phrased a lot of her answers to women, minorities, LGBT. She hit the areas that she needed to hit.
And Donald Trump, obviously in a stronger position in terms of that 90 minutes than we've seen him in previous debates. It was as if he had a crescendo over the past 3, starting off a little rocky, getting a little stronger, and then tonight I think you could say was easily his strongest performance of the 3, sparring with Hillary, not taking the bait every time she threw it, bringing up the emails, staying on the foundation, throwing back in her face the disclosures that we've learned over the past 2 days about Project Veritas and the role that the Democrats had in stirring up trouble at some of his campaign rallies, as we've been reporting on earlier this evening. He did draw open laughs in the room when he said that he respects women, and then he closed the debate out by muttering "such a nasty woman" about Hillary Clinton, which caught a lot of attention on social media. But by far the #1 most discussed issue on social media tonight was Donald Trump's unwillingness to accept the legitimacy of the results of this election, refusing to go so far as to say that he would accept them, saying, "I'll wait and see, I'll keep you in suspense," which had, I guess, the online equivalent of a jaw drop among many Republicans even, as sort of trouble he didn't need to stir up for himself and to take away from what was otherwise a fairly solid debate performance by Mr. Trump tonight.
Well, considering that Governor Pence has said the exact opposite, and so did Ivanka Trump. Chris Wallace, a different type of moderator who kept the train on the tracks and did get in. He was definitely not a potted plant throughout this entire debate, as he promised he would not be, but the questions ranging on a host of policy issues that we really haven't covered in this election, so in that way, somewhat refreshing.
I would say that's how it's done. He did great. Want to bring in our panel: Britt Hume, Dana Perino, Juan Williams, and Monica Crowley. Britt, your thoughts?
Well, I think that there are 2 things that happen in a debate. One of them is the performance you put in the debate itself. And then the second is how you come out in the coverage thereafter. Now, part of that's the analysis and what people say about it, but part of it is what makes the headline. The headline out of this debate, as far as I can tell, is his refusal to say he would accept the results of the election. That doesn't happen usually in America. It's newsworthy, it's controversial, it's a big deal. And so the question is that something that's going to help him? I doubt it. I think I agree with the 2 of you. This was his best performance to date. He scored point after point after point on her. She wasn't rattled by it. She did fine in her own right, but there was nothing spectacular about her performance tonight. There didn't need to be. He's the guy that really needed to pull something off here tonight. And even if he did, and he may well have in the eyes of many people, I think he stepped on it by refusing to say he'd accept the results of the
Monica, your thoughts?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because debates are less about policy nuance than they are about style, tone, the occasional zinger, and demonstrating an ability to think on your feet. I think tonight both of these candidates went into this debate with certain missions. Donald Trump's was to project a sense of calm, level-headedness, rationality, and I think he projected that through his tone tonight. He needed to show voters that he is a safe choice if you are uncomfortable with Mrs. Clinton. He also needed to reassure on responsible leadership. And to that extent, I think he accomplished his mission. Mrs. Clinton, because she cannot reassure on the honest and trustworthy aspect of her candidacy and personality, she had to reassure on core competence, and I think she probably delivered on that as well.
Juan, your thoughts?
Well, I can't get over not accepting the results of an election. I remember what happened between Gore and Bush, and it was very difficult for the whole country, specifically for Democrats who thought that Al Gore got more votes than George W. Bush, but accepted the result for the better of our country.
Some did.
At the end. Didn't
No
accept
doubt.
it on election night.
Well, no, it was fought over, but
Right.
it was accepted.
At
And
the end.
President Bush's authority as President of the United States never called into
Well,
question.
that's not
What
true.
I-
That it was never called into question.
I don't think
he
it was
called
ever called into
illegitimate
question.
for years.
I
Dana,
don't know anybody
you worked
like
for
that.
President George
He
W.
might have been criticized, but I have never, in terms of the way George W. Bush was treated, he was our president, he was my president. And I'm telling you, when you say that you will consider it, you'll think about it, to me, that's a showstopper. I don't know how you get past that. That's not in our American tradition. That's not the way we play politics.
We should point out that Donald Trump is leaving, and we're getting word that he's not going to go to the spin room as he has done previously.
Right.
He is leaving the hall. I'm sorry. to
And
interrupt.
just for the record,
Yeah.
Al Gore, after the legal challenge was resolved, did not challenge the legitimacy of the president.
That's what
for
I'm
the
saying
election.
to you.
Right. Well, I thought you were saying Democrats, which is not true.
Well, no, it's
Some
Al
did-
Gore.
right.
Al Gore was the Democrat. He was the opponent. But to move on, I think that when we look at this, to come to the point that you and Brett were saying about his performance, I thought as specific when it came to the foundation issue, there were some issues where he pointed out that Hillary Clinton had to pivot quickly away from what he was saying because she was on unsteady ground. But when it came back to the issue of rigging, and, you know, oh, this election is rigged, and he was pushed by Chris Wallace, then pushed by Mrs. Clinton. Ultimately, he found himself in a corner where she said, oh, that's a pattern of Donald's behavior. He has a dark vision in which everything is rigged, and ultimately even not winning the Emmy, and he joked, should have won it. I just think, again, it reveals to the viewer here that Donald Trump has a certain vision, and I'm not sure that what came across was that of someone who is presidential, which was a high bar, but a necessary bar for him to meet tonight.
Dana.
I agree he had a first strong 30 minutes, but I just don't think that's enough. I thought that on the economy, that on the place where he could have actually played the most offense, he went on tangents about NAFTA and NATO that had nothing to do with the actual question in hand and his particular strengths. I did think it was good when he talked about being on the campaign trail for the past year and that it's moved him, that he has seen some of that. Like, that's some of that grace and humility that Laura Ingraham was talking about before the debate started. But I also felt that Hillary Clinton knew exactly who she was talking to, especially on the issues of the Supreme Court, guns, abortion, immigration, and nuclear weapons. And at the very end of the debate, fine debate for him. Not stellar. He's not going to win any awards for it. But at the end, when he whispers, what a nasty woman, I thought, like, there's another headline for you that you didn't need.
As Sean said earlier in the debate, he attacks women, he disparages them personally.
Right, but
this was a point she started the debate with.
And again tonight, he did a better job of scoring points on her than he did making the case for himself in
Yeah.
the programs. What I think would have helped him immensely tonight is if when he laid out a vision of his own program, he could have spoken of it in some depth and with some force.
We're going to head into the spin room, Bridge. Sorry, this is Kellyanne Conway talking to our own Bill Hemmer.
One time confirming facts that have already been published by the New York Times. This woman has lied repeatedly to the FBI and others, to the Benghazi families who were in the, some of whom were in our as our guests here tonight, Bill. And so I thought he really took the case to her and had her off balance. I thought tonight's debate showed people exactly what Donald Trump says. There's experience and then there's bad experience. And today she was held to account for really decades long of either misstep, miscalculations, or outright failures.
You have seen the polling, you watch it every day, and you have seen the polling move away from you for the past 2 weeks. Do you think tonight stopped that slide?
I do. I think you're going to see the polls tighten. If people were paying attention to that, and if the journalists who were privately telling me on my text and email that Hillary Clinton seemed off tonight and that it was Donald Trump's best debate, if they actually honestly put that in print and on radio and TV, and they're the ones conveying the messages to those Americans who maybe did not see the debate firsthand, then yes, you will see the polls tighten.
You told me before the debate started tonight that he was going to prosecute the last 30 years of Hillary Clinton. Do you think that was effective tonight? And how were you telling him to go after her? And was it less interruption?
It was
Hold on one
very
second.
effective tonight.
Let's take a
It was
listen.
more facts and figures. And it was basically saying everything to her from, look, we would have been better off if you hadn't done anything in Syria. You own the Russian reset. The way you came out of Iraq helped create the vacuum for the birth and growth of ISIS. You have said that you've been fighting for women and children for so many years. You've been there for 30 years. Nothing has happened. And I thought, Bill, every time he put Hillary Clinton on defense and she was mentioning about all the things that still need to be solved, it's a natural indictment of what hasn't been done in the 8 years of President Obama.
Thank you for your time, Kellyanne. Kellyanne.
Bill Hemmer with Kellyanne Conway in the spin room.
She actually said earlier that Donald Trump will accept the results of the election because he will win the election, which is directly at odds with what her candidate said about 10 minutes earlier.
Which is probably going to be the headline.
I think if he wins, he will accept it.
He will accept it. Definitely. He'll definitely accept
Let's
it.
be fair here, folks.
That's true.
If he got that Emmy.
Fair and balanced. It's been quite an evening. Much more to talk about, including some of Chris Wallace's best moments from the night.
We'll have our special coverage, and we're going to have some special guests as well coming up of the third and final presidential debate. Stay with us.
When she's playing chicken, look, Putin, from everything I see, has no respect for this person.
Well, that's because he'd rather have a puppet as president of
No
the United
puppet,
States.
no puppet.
And it's pretty clear.
You're the puppet.
It's
I'm sorry, Sergeant. I can't touch a gun.
I think this is cowardice. Why do you still here?
You are free to run into battle without a weapon to protect yourself.
You better come home to me.
Fall back!